today isn't the America that he grew up as to be a great baseball player?
Absolutely not. He would be disappointed, and he would look back with nostalgia to the days when he was growing up, and wish that those days were back again.
Don?
Is it? In just a second, I just want to follow that.
No problem. Go ahead.
Emilio, as a presidential historian, are we not seeing that wish for a bygone era with this discussion that we're seeing in the political process today by both parties remembering Ronald Reagan?
Well, Ronald Reagan was unique. He was perhaps the last American hero that we had as a president. People disagree with his policies, but no one will disagree with the fact that Ronald Reagan was a leader. He was a great communicator. He had vision, and he was a true patriot. So, as I said, anybody can disagree with his policies and some of the things that he fought for. Nobody could say that Ronald was a great American hero, and he is among the great American presidents today.
Well, Don, jump in there and give us your thoughts on what Dan and Emilio have said here, and then we'll take our first break and come back and get into our first topic here.
Well, I'm going to say three things. One, I actually saw Joe DiMaggio live in Yankee Stadium, and actually had a chance to talk with Joe Garagiola, who knew him and was a great friend of Yogi Berra. And there was three things about Joe DiMaggio which we don't have today. One was he was a leader who led by example. Two, he didn't speak very much, but he said when the Yankees took the field, he usually just said, "Let's go," and they all followed because they knew who their leader was. And they knew he gave his all at all times. Three, he was very much a man of himself who lived his rules, his way, and demanded of other people around him that they do the same. That there were certain qualities he expected of people, and certain qualities he expected of teammates that made the whole better than each part combined. So we don't have those things. And I have to say one other thing. There's a famous line when he was married to Marilyn Monroe. They were in Korea, and all of the soldiers around them were cheering. And Marilyn said, "Have you ever heard so much cheering?" And Joe DiMaggio said, "Yes, I have." But he believed in all of these things, and he lived his life afterwards. People don't really realize about people. What they do after they leave the stage is often as important as what happens on the stage. And he lived his life very, very much that way afterwards. He would never do anything in public that would degrade his image or hurt other people. That's something we don't see. Look at what ex-President Clinton has done with his foundation and a few other things. You picked the right one, Emilio, last American hero. Remember that line, "Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?"
Right. That's what I was thinking when I wrote that essay. Yeah.
We don't have heroes like that. But you want to know something? We said that about people many times in our history, and then we have people like Ronald Reagan who appear afterwards. And my confidence is that a new American hero will appear and hopefully lead us out of this morass that we're in now.
Well, we're going to do this. We're going to take a brief time out here. We're going to put Don and Dan on hold on Skype. And we're going to put Emilio on mute on the telephone, and we're going to take a brief break.
There is an injustice in this world. We want to help that injustice be eliminated. Check out GoFundMe.com/JustEsther. That's right. GoFundMe.com/JUSTETSTHER. It's Family Restoration Help. Check it out today on GoFundMe.com. They're asking for help due to the event stemming from a family loss. For those that don't know them, they're a single mom, retired, and have a daughter that is a college freshman, engineering major. She's been in a long legal battle for the last year, and she's trying to keep it short. So check it out today at GoFundMe.com/JustEsther. This is an amazing new GoFundMe campaign. We need to help these folks out today. This is Family Restoration Help. Help them today. Help Winona Johnson over at www.gofundme.com/JUSTESTHER and tell them you heard about it here on the radio program. Incredible new marketing partner with us today at Transmedia Worldwide. This is a tremendous YouCaring.com campaign. This is for well-being for people. That's right. Support them, support community, provide complementary therapy. Health and wellness is the foundation of well-being, but it often comes at a cost. There's no reach for those who may need it the most. This is why the support is so important. Sahul is a qualified massage therapist in northwest of England. In the line of work, they meet many people with many different needs, both physical and psychological. They've witnessed firsthand how these needs are often exasperated by stresses of everyday life. They see the benefits that massage and other non-invasive therapeutic treatments bring to them, and they're convinced that there should be a way for everyone to have access to this kind of care. Check it out today at youcaring.com. Search, support me, support community, provide complementary therapy. Let's tell you a little bit more one more time. Check out youcaring.com/wellbeing for people. That's youcaring.com/WELLBEINGFORPEOPL. And tell them you heard about it here, Transmedia Worldwide. An incredible new marketing partner with us today here on the radio program. The drums of war rumble. A battle stirs for the fate of mankind. Will the will of a hero overcome the wrath of ancient evil? This was one of the most and best books I've read this year by far, says Payanka Blogs. Daniel Newman from Vampire Diaries and The Walking Dead crowed, "It's a new vampire book!" Now available on Amazon. Whispers by Aram Klingen. Check it out today on Amazon. It's Whispers by ARAMKELEDJIAN. And tell them you heard about it here, Transmedia Worldwide. An incredible new marketing partner with us today at Transmedia Worldwide. It's a great new Kickstarter campaign. Under the Staircase Brewing Company. Find them on Kickstarter.com. Kickstarter.com. Under the Staircase Brewing Company. Their goal is $50,000. Under the Staircase Brewing Company is a startup project based out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. The founder, whom works full-time in the medical field, has been brewing beer for over 10 years. The project started with a 3-gallon home brewing kit that fermented into great beer under the staircase in his basement. It has now evolved into a 30-gallon hand-built brewing operation, handcrafting and bottling multiple styles of beer, ales, lagers, so much more. All ingredients are locally sourced in Indiana and the USA. 100% of all natural ingredients. Under the Staircase Brewing Company is more than just handcrafted beer. It's about pride, happiness, community outreach, and charity. Beer brings folks together, and Under the Staircase Brewing Company wants to bring the community in the entire country together over one of the great handcrafted beers. Check it out today online at Kickstarter.com. KICKSTARTER.com. Search Under the Staircase Brewing Company, and let's help them get to their goal of $50,000. And tell them you heard about it here, Transmedia Worldwide.
What is one of the most underappreciated little creatures on Earth? Find out on today's Creation Moments Minute. Most people don't appreciate the lowly earthworm because it's not very pretty. Biology textbooks mistakenly say that earthworms were among the first simple land creatures to evolve. But earthworms really aren't simple at all. They have a well-developed nervous system, a brain, and 10 hearts. Earthworms tunnel through the soil by literally eating the soil itself, turning it into an excellent natural fertilizer. In one test, soil scientists compared earthworms and the best fertilizers you can buy. The ground the earthworms fertilized had 5 times more nitrogen, twice as much calcium, and 7 times more phosphorus than the best that modern science could produce. So while the earthworms aren't pretty, our Creator has provided them to enrich the soil and help to feed us all. For CreationMomentsMinute.com, I'm Darren Marlar.
Of the month.
We like to do this once a month where we have a chat with our two guys from Verona and the kid from Rome. I want to start with Don in this first segment.
Wait, excuse me for interrupting.
Okay, go.
Can I ask the little guy from Rome one more question before we get to Don?
Yes, go.
Go right ahead.
Were you surprised at the renege on the Vatican on the couple that the Pope was going to bring in?
I was surprised. I didn't understand it. It seemed like it was a bureaucratic reason that they were using. And I think that probably some people below the Pope actually got involved in this to try to make more sense of it. But I was surprised. Yes, I was. I really was.
Do the Roman people care?
No, it didn't even make the Italian headlines here.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, Don, start us off here, my friend, with our first topic.
Oh, my topic is the DEA today, last week, finally started the first test with veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder using medical marijuana as a way of alleviating it. They've been doing it illegally for years, I'm sure.
Yes.
But finally, they're going to start a test. The significance, as Dan pointed out, he said, why the DEA versus not the federal FDA? And the answer is simple. The FDA essentially has not been very forthcoming in terms of medical marijuana, and DEA just said, let's go ahead and try it. I think it's a major breakthrough because PSTD is a problem affecting our veterans, and I think it's a tremendous breakthrough. It's also on the heels of the fact that a majority of Americans now believe in some form of marijuana legalization. I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to see. I think before the end of the Obama administration, we're going to see some lessening of the rules. It's interesting. You can grow marijuana legally in the United States under a federal law, but you can't sell it, which I think is funny. And the IRS, as you may be aware, taxes at 35%. Anything else? All of us, as you know, I'm on the board of a medical marijuana, which is a nonprofit dispensary. But our big thing is we can't pay our tax bill, given that the only thing we can write off in terms of expenses is that associated with the grow, but not the selling. But the fact that the DEA moved ahead with this one, and there's about 10 or 15 others down the road, we're going to see a major change in American policy towards marijuana. I'll leave it at that.
I'd like to jump in on that if I could, Jim.
Yeah,
I know that.
That's true. That's true. I guess the first question I would ask, because I wrote a piece a long time ago, and you may have remembered it, Jim. One of the very first pieces that I had sent to you was that if we want to find out how good or bad medical marijuana is, why don't we study it the same way we study a new drug through the FDA and go through the trials and go through the research and collect all the data and then come out with a recommendation, empower a panel. But I have to say, I'm disappointed that, because I'm wondering whether or not the Drug Enforcement Agency has the resources and the talent to conduct all the clinical work that's going to be needed to do research on medical marijuana, or is it going to be a passive approval? And if they do, I suspect, as Don's saying, that the FDA is going to come out and talk about the science being flawed, or other doctors talking about the science being flawed. It's not really a true review, and this agency was never empowered to determine whether or not what drugs should be sold or not. And so I'm concerned that again, we've got the government trying to figure out, and the Drug Enforcement Agency is going to determine whether this drug should be available for veterans. And Don is right. In my travels around the country, working with the veteran centers that I do with our Songs and Stories for Soldiers Foundation, I find a lot of veterans, especially Vietnam War veterans, who are telling us that they've been self-medicating for years and they've been using marijuana and alcohol as their drugs of choice to try and deal with primarily the frustration and the anxiety created by PTSD, and the sense of loneliness, to move them out of reality to the lack of reality that drugs and alcohol provide them. So I hope that it's a good scientific study. It seems to me that the great thing would be for the Department of Drug Enforcement to subcontract with a major university research center to do the research on behalf of the DEA. But it doesn't sound like they're going to.
Well, this study is, in fact, being done by three of the most prestigious medical research labs who have been for years looking into this. The importance of it is the first, and it was publicly announced, and that is the important one. But Dan, can I tell you my favorite line from A Thousand Clowns, where
Okay.
she says, "Come back to reality," referring to the main character, and he replies, "I'll only go as a tourist." So the point being that marijuana is, for the most part, a temporary relief. It is not a cure-all, which
Right.
is one of the reasons the FDA is so much against some of this, because you understand we supposedly have opioids that do what medical marijuana does. However, research in Israel and France has shown that certain strains, and remember also, there's over 700 different marijuana strains, and more of it being developed each day, that makes this whole area one of a tremendous opportunity, but also fraught with many legal landmines until we all get on the same page.
Right. I agree.
Emilio, any thoughts?
Well, for me, I look at it from a slightly different point of view, because you brought up a problem here, Don, that I think is really serious. The heart of the problem is the way we treat our veterans, and I think that's the real issue here. Perhaps marijuana will be something that will give them relief for the basic problems they have. But the real issue, in my view, is that we don't do enough for veterans. Some people feel that perhaps we're doing too much. I really believe that these men and women that have suffered so much for liberty and for our country really deserve so much more than what we're giving them today. And I think they should be free of a lot of the anxiety that they're suffering, and it's up to us as people to make this a priority, no matter what it is. So, but we really should be focusing on giving the veterans really what they deserve. They need so much more.
Emilio, let me ask you a question on this same subject. What is what is in Italy? What is the issue as far as marijuana and illegal drugs? Is it a problem as it is in the United States, or is it not a problem?
It is a problem in Italy, but the U.S. usually leads the way when it comes to bringing up these issues from a social context. So what's happening in the United States now, and just the way Don brought up the topic, will probably be discussed in Italy within the next decade for veterans or for healing or for whatever. So the U.S. is always ahead of us. But here, drugs are a very serious problem. And now we have the problem of drugs and alcohol on the highways. Italy just passed, just this last year, statutes saying that it's a criminal offense to be under the influence of anything, substance abuse or whatever, and to be driving a vehicle. They just passed it now. So it gives you an understanding of how far back these societies are, especially Italian societies, dealing with 21st century problems that we've been dealing with in the United States for decades.
Yeah. Jim,
Yes.
let me ask you a question.
Okay, what do we got for you? Or what do you got for me?
Many of the states, if not all of the states in the United States, sued the tobacco companies because they said that cigarettes were carcinogenic and people were dying of lung cancer.
Yes.
And so there was this great suit, this great billions and billions of dollars settlement after they believed they showed people that smoking tobacco ingested tar and nicotine into the system, more so tar than nicotine, and it was the ingestion of tar that caused the cancer.
Yes.
And so the states went to court, they sued Big Tobacco, they won billions and billions and billions of dollars. That's the premise, okay, Jim?
Yes.
Today, if I go into Colorado and I buy marijuana in a reefer to smoke it, the tar level in that is greater than 2 times the tar level in cigarettes. Now, if we start putting young people on marijuana, I'm not talking medical, I'm just talking about casual or informal use.
Yeah.
We're going to create another generation of people who are going to have lung cancer and other diseases sanctioned, this time, sanctioned by the government and taxing it. Isn't that a conflict of interest, Jim?
Yes, I think it is, but at the same time, I think what's going on is that no one's seeing steps down the road. They immediately go, oh, pot works, we can tax it, let's go for it, we got to fix our problems.
Well, can I?
Go ahead,
Jim,
Don, jump in there.
Can I get you off the? There's no doubt that within the key to medical marijuana is not smoking it, but rather extracting the key ingredients from it. When you smoke medical marijuana, you're only using 10 to 15% of its efficiency.
Yes.
What you have to do is extract. It's called extraction. The key elements in it, the THC, etc., and put it into cookies, put it into liquid form. One of the main fallbacks or the reasons doctors don't prescribe it in New Jersey, you must, by the way, have a doctor prescribe it, is that you cannot prescribe specific dosage. Most doctors want specific dosage, X amount for Y condition. The big pharma industry is very anxious to get into the business because they have the ability to turn weed with the tar and turn it into a specific drug with a specific potency, specific usage. there's no doubt in my mind, in the mind of most people involved with medical marijuana, that the real end of it as a felony, rather as a class one drug, will be when a prescribed drug is when we're allowed to do extraction and do the research to say Y amount will cause this effect. That's the problem, and you're right, Dan. If you do it the way we're doing it right now, we're really substituting one problem for another.
Yeah.
Our hope is that in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we will have all of this laid out the way it should be done, the way we deal with other products. The interesting thing is, Emilio and Dan and Jim, if aspirin were invented today, it would be a prescribed drug because of its potency and what its effects. It's a sad fact. So, but it was developed before we had all these rules. We hope people who are trying to make medical marijuana into what it is, a way of helping people, that the future will be brighter when we can extract it, which is not permitted, by the way, in a lot of states.
Yeah, I noticed that with the national media, when they always talk about this drug issue, and they go to California, they always show kids on the street smoking it. They don't show them eating brownies or cookies or chewing gum. They're smoking it and they're ingesting it, and it's the deadliness of the concentration of the tars through the smoking it is going to create a number of people, and I'm concerned that as we try and legalize it for recreational use across the United States, whether it takes 5 years, I don't know. But when it comes, it's going to come, and you're going to see an explosion in cancer rates again.
Well, but the other side of it, when you put it into a cookie, or et cetera, you're extracting it, and you don't know how much you're ingesting. And in fact, more overdoses occur when people eat too much of a cookie or some other form of extracted than they do smoking it. It's very hard to overdose on marijuana. It's very easy to overdose on extracted marijuana products. And that's where our real concern is. And in fact, what people have discovered is that most of the overdoses that they're associated with are accidents. Don't forget, marijuana use in Colorado has skyrocketed the accident statistics in that state.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things, but the problem we have is we're not permitting states and the federal government to come in and do what needs to be done, the research to make it legal.
Right. I guess I'm just concerned that we, as we talked earlier, as we have a society that ignores more and more of the laws in the Constitution, we're going to create a society that they want this drug, they want this, they want that car, they want that house, they want this television set, they want this, and they don't feel like they should have to wait for it. And I'm concerned that we have built a society of people who are not drug dependent, but drug induced, in that they want the pleasure or whatever it is from that purchase, but it's not a long-standing, meaningful experience. It could, in fact, turn into a horrible experience for some people. And we don't... Go ahead.
Then let me bring it back into the presidential race and bring our presidential... If you really look at what our candidates are saying in this presidential... They're pandering to the I want part of society.
Yes, they are.
All they're promising are things that people want. None of them are saying, look, to get the want, you need to do the hard work behind it. And this is another example of it. I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I was taught you work for what you get. But in this presidential campaign, we're talking about how we're going to give everything away.
Yeah, there was on O'Reilly last night. Walters was doing an interview with some college students, and he asked the question, "What is it you want from the country?" And they wanted everything from apartments to cars to free suits to drugs to free health care. And when asked how is it going to be paid for, not their problem. One guy said, "Well, doesn't the Treasury have all the money? Can't we pay it out of the Treasury of the country?" But the point is that in an issue as important as this, and I know that I've been reading that the opiate epidemic, not opium, but opiate epidemic across this country is scary, and going on like crazy. And it's another lack of responsibility of the individual person on his life and the impact on other people's lives that causes the problem. Do we need to take a break, Jim?
We need to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to keep chatting. We're going to have Dan lead our next segment. We're going to put our two guys from Verona on hold on Skype. We're going to put Emilio on hold on the phone, and we'll be back with more here in our program.
Jiggy Jaguar 24/7. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to our big broadcast. It's coast to coast and border to border on TuneIn, iTunes, Radio Loyalty, Stitcher, and of course, 50 plus AM FM stations across Canada, United States, North America. I try to change it up every once in a while because it seems like I'm reading from a script, which I am. Because if I can't keep notes, I'm an idiot. I won't remember everything. Monday through Friday, we're live, 2 to 5 Central, 3 to 6 Eastern, 12 to 3 Pacific, 1 to 4 Mountain Standard, and of course, 24/7 at JiggyJaguar.com on the TuneIn apps and Radio Loyalty. Brand new free Droid app is available at JiggyJaguar.us. Stream the show live, 24/7 replay, exclusive news and programming information, selected editions on iHeartRadio. Our telephone number, 267-22-JI. GGY, JiggyJaguar.com for podcasts and everything else. Check out our great sponsor before we get in to hour number 3. 15 minutes after the hour, our second segment of the broadcast today. The website is thewrestlingbox.cratejoy.com. They're a monthly box service for the wrestling fans, where you will get a new wrestling shirt in your size and other collectible starting at $14.99. This is an amazing promotion. This is an amazing promotion. 2 lucky fans will receive a ticket to see WrestleMania if you order and mention the promo code The Wrestling Box. They can save 10% off their order at the Wrestling Box. .cratejoy.com. That's the wrestlingbox.cratejoy.com. Check it out today and tell them you heard about it here. Transmedia Worldwide. Right now, hour number 3. Let's get back into it here on our big program. We're going to get back into it here. We've got Dan Perkins,
It's been an
Don
interesting
Mazzella,
time.
and of course, Emilio joining us from Rome. And Dan, lead us off on our next segment here.
I want to talk about Emilio's specialty. I have a piece that was published last week that's titled "Obama's Lame Duck Tour Was Lame." And I start with the president going to Cuba, the first American president going to that island in 80-some years, and neither of the Castro brothers met him at the airport. He was shunned by the Castro brothers. The day after he left, Fidel wrote a 1,500-word open letter actively criticizing Obama as being inept, too young, and no experience, and that they were not going to depend on America to do anything for them. Next, he gets on the plane and the next leg of his journey, and he goes to the kingdom. Again, I wrote that don't be surprised if the kingdom doesn't shun him also. And lo and behold, the president flies into Riyadh, and nobody from the government or the royal family meets him and his entourage. But he continues. He goes and he tries to convince the Saudi prince, the Saudi king, and the Saudi princes that he is correct and that they are wrong, that having a strong Iran as a nuclear power will add stability to the Middle East. They're not buying it. And so we have another problem where there were 28 pages that were redacted out of the 9/11 Commission report, and supposedly dealing to the issue of how Saudi Arabia was involved in supporting the bombers of September 11th. In addition, the Congress is contemplating a legislation that says that the widows and orphans of the Marines who were killed in Lebanon under the Iranian-financed terrorist attack were awarded $2.5 billion in settlement for the grievances. The Saudis believe that if that legislation were to be updated, that they may be vulnerable. So they tried to blackmail the President of the United States by saying, we will sell $750 billion worth of assets if you can't stop these two pieces. Now, for the average American, $750 billion was a lot of money. But remember, we got a $19 trillion deficit. And according to the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury, OPEC as a cartel, the 13 nations in OPEC, own a very small percentage of U.S. government debt. So that means that Saudi Arabia's piece of the small piece is even smaller. So they can't have any impact on the government bond market. Now, in addition, they do own stocks. They could sell those. That may cause some short-term speculation in the market. But they also own real estate, not very liquid. So the president left telling them that they really need to get on board with the idea that Iran is going to be another power in the Middle East. Not to be outdone, he gets on a plane and he flies to London to tell the British people how they should vote in the election on whether or not Britain should stay in the EU. What did the British leadership say to the president? Butt out. You don't tell us what to do in our country, and we don't tell you what to do in your country. So we've got a president of the United States who finishes the tour, this leg of the tour, by going to Germany. Before he gets there, 35,000 people are in the streets protesting his arrival. So, Mr. Presidential Historian, would he be, as I said in the closing of my document, better off to just stay at home?
The worst thing a president could do is to conduct a foreign policy trip without a plan, without an objective, and without a vision. But let's begin with the Cuban part of this. It reminded me of Aesop's fable of the frog and the scorpion. I'm sure you probably remember it. A frog and a scorpion both find themselves on the bank of a river, and the frog is about to swim across, and the scorpion says, I can't get across because I can't. I said, hey, wait a minute, you're a scorpion. You may sting me, and I'll die. The scorpion said, well, that doesn't make any sense. Let's make a deal here. and we'll get across the river together. Well, halfway across the river, the frog suddenly feels, bingo, he's been stung by the scorpion. And now they begin to drown, and the frog says to the scorpion, "Why did you do that? Now we're both going to die." The scorpion said, "Hey, once a scorpion, always a scorpion." Well, if anybody thought that Fidel Castro was going to change, they were completely misled. And he acted like he's always acted, with disrespect and also with doing those things he's been good at for years, and that's writing propaganda against the United States. So that wasn't a surprising trip as far as I was concerned, and the president certainly couldn't have called that a success. And there was no goal there. There was no objective, no vision. I still can't figure out why he went. The same thing with Saudi Arabia. The Saudis know their neighborhood much better than we do. They know what's gone on there in the past, and they know what's going on in the future. And when we talk about the Saudis involved in 9/11, talking about the Saudis, we're talking about Saudi Arabians, people. Those people, if they were involved, they should be sued. Yes, if we could find them. If we have individuals that are part of this, they're perpetrators, then they should be brought to justice in one form or another. I agree with that. But when it comes to Iran, the Saudis know the Iranians much better than we do. They don't trust them, and the Iranians still haven't created an atmosphere, an environment of trust in the world. They haven't done that yet, and that's their obligation now, to do it. And this is where the President of the United States and others ought to be encouraging them. Show us that you're trustworthy, and show us that we can welcome you back into the group of civilized nations. That's not happening. Here in Europe is in complete turmoil. The lack of leadership, Dan, as you were talking about, it must be in the water. I don't know what it is, but there's a tremendous lack of leadership in Europe across the board. They can't deal with the migrant issue. They can't deal with their economic issues. They can't deal with integration, with their own economic integration and social integration in Europe. 28 countries, 28 different opinions. So the president comes here and starts to give lectures about what's good for Europe and good for the United States at the same time. This is not the moment. I don't know who is advising him to do this. Again, this is a trip without a plan. And it might have made Mr. Cameron happy for a while, but then he realized that it was a big mistake to encourage Barack Obama to say anything at all about Britain leaving Europe, because he probably did more damage than good, and he probably encouraged more people to vote for Britain leaving Europe than ever before. So a president can't go on a trip without an objective, without a vision, first expressing it to the American people why I'm going, and then making sure he accomplishes something along the way. This hasn't been done, and the president once again shows that he has no experience in foreign policy.
Yeah, and I would say that his narcissistic attitude about I know what's right for England, I know what's right for the kingdom, I know what's right for Cuba. There was never ever any doubt in his mind that the decision that he made in those countries was the right decision, regardless of whether or not the local government agreed with him. I also think that a lot of what's going on and the reaction that's taking place is driven by, in Europe, is driven by the inability of the government leaders to deal with political correctness. And until they get a handle on that, until they begin to understand that we have to be nations of laws and you have to follow the laws and you can't make all these accommodations, we're going to continue to have an increasingly unstable world around the world.
Could I interject a point here? Show
Sure you can.
contrast.
Sure you can.
When President Nixon went to China, Zhou Enlai, who was then the number one in the country, made it a point to meet him at the airport. Mao was still alive, but he joined him, met him at the airport at the first visit and at the second visit, which tells you how far the American presence in the world has deteriorated when President Obama is not met at any of the airports. Tells you that alone. And by the way, that was brought up to me by a high school journalism student who I'm working with on another project, who had seen the video and asked me that question because, as you know, I went with Nixon the second time, and it tells you a little bit about how the world sees us today.
Well, I know we don't have much time, but following what you're saying there, Don, it really is amazing how much the image, for lack of a better word, the prestige of the president of the United States has diminished so rapidly under the president with the world leaders. There was an article which I quoted in my piece that in October of 2015, some number of the committee members who decided to give Obama the Nobel Peace Prize shortly after he took office have now regretted that decision and openly said it was a mistake. He did not prove himself to be worthy. And I think that part of this world tour that he's going on at the end of his term is part of his way to try and justify the fact that he got the Nobel Prize, but he didn't earn it.
Well, my sources tell me that he believes that the tour was a success. He truly believes that his tour was a success, and is making sure that when he writes his report on his years in the White House, that will be one of the highlights. If you can believe it or not. I could not believe that when I heard that.
Now, Mr. Historian, he's going to make another trip. He's going to go to the Far East. And there is talk that he's going to go to Hiroshima. Do you believe he's going to apologize to the Japanese people for America's dropping the bomb?
I would imagine he would, because he probably hasn't read the book, 2016, Selecting the President, where I discuss why Harry Truman made that decision. And I think if the president really dwells on it, if he goes there, he should discuss it and discuss why that decision was made, and we hope that we won't have to make decisions like that in the future. But we're talking about dropping the standards for what the United States is doing abroad, with examples like this of a presidential trip, again, that has no plans, and the goals that are being sought are very, very low. Imagine this, and Don brought this up as a very interesting point. Do you think that Richard Nixon would have gone to China at all if he knew that somebody else besides Zhou Enlai would meet him at the airport? Of course not. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it because he knew how important the trip was. So, if President Obama actually knew that he would not be met at the airport in Cuba or anywhere else by somebody his equivalent, well, why would he go there? This is the role of the Foreign Service. When I was in the Foreign Service, we were able to tell the president in advance, look, you're coming, this is what's going to happen. This is how they're going to treat you. So the president knows all these things in advance. There are no surprises. The same thing with coming to Europe. The Foreign Service we would be able to tell him, if you say this, this, and this is going to be the reaction in the press, in the government circles, and with the public. We could predict it. So the president knew all these things in advance. Well, it just shows to me that his standards for these kinds of trips are very, very low. When he goes to Asia, it's going to be worse than it is right now.
Do you think,
Emilio, the president thinks he's the smartest man in the room, the smartest person in the room, in every room he's in.
right?
How can you expect him to listen to what other people say? He hasn't done it in his administration, except when he gets in trouble. No, that's my own comment.
President Obama is a very smart guy. He's a very smart man. But his real problem is that he's come into a job where he doesn't have 360 degrees of the experience that he needs. And even after 8 years, there's still something missing there, especially on the foreign policy side.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that I mean I really believe that he believes he is the best, and when he makes a decision, if he's telling the Saudi Arabia get over Iran, it's best for the Middle East and best for the world, that he absolutely believes that he is making the best decision for the world because it's an Obama decision. And I think that the reception that he's been getting is that his attitude is wearing very thin with a lot of the European and world leaders.
Dan and Don, if you recall in the past, many times a president would travel somewhere, and at the end of the trip, wherever he was, and they'd have a press conference, they would basically say, we had very frank and interesting discussions. And they wouldn't go into chapter and verse about details because the really serious stuff is confidential. It's behind the scenes. And these kinds of conversations you don't want to have the public or the press delve into because they'll never understand all the facts. Well, that's the same kind of thing that should have happened in Saudi Arabia. The president should not have said that he was trying to convince the Saudis to change their mind about the Iranians. That was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The president should have said we want to have bilateral discussions on a whole series of issues and not take a position where he's trying to change their minds. If he wants to do it behind the scenes, fine. But please, don't take it out into the public realm. I think that just causes problems like we're facing right now where we're talking about it on the radio and we think, as part of the public, that the trip was a failure. You see?
Right, agreed.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you making time for us today. Emilio, before we go, how do we find you online, sir?
First of all, go into my book, 2016, Selecting the President. All of my books are there.